expose on that they were trying to work. Substack was trying to work with X and, friendly competitors or whatever you want to call it. But for whatever reason, I guess Elon didn't feel the same way. And this is why often with Substack articles, when you post them on Twitter, you have to, download the image separately, put that up, because you don't actually get a social card popping up on Twitter when you post a Substack article. So for those you don't know, when you post a link in Twitter and you see the description that comes up and an image or whatever, that's called a social card. I guess you'd call it a form of an API. And Twitter, for some reason, blocks all the social cards from Substack, unfortunately. So it makes it difficult for everybody, which I don't understand why. But what are you going to do? So the first thing is I got to get my desktop organized here. And now that, I think everything's sorted out. But I do want to start with just wishing all of you a good morning and an amazing morning. And I hope this is going to be the best Saturday of your life. I'm going to do what I can to make that happen. We're going to do that by bringing us together over a cup of freedom. I choose coffee in my freedom cup, but you can choose whatever you like. All my Brits that I know, at least the Brits I'm close with, would scoff at that because they hate coffee, but they do love tea. So if tea is your cup of freedom, so be it. It's a good way for us to come together and celebrate the freedoms that we have, and more importantly, work on expanding those freedoms in the future, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. It's going to be quite relevant in a way that might make some people uncomfortable, but the truth has the tendency to do that. Good morning, Megan. And please like, share, subscribe. Share this out with your friends. Share this out with your enemies, particularly your enemies, because I do like getting their trolly comments. I think Blue Sky is absolutely hysterical, by the way. So if you want a good laugh, it's like watching MSNBC, all the mental illness there, but in social media form. And they're all on Blue Sky, and it's absolutely wild. And you'd be surprised how many accounts on Blue Sky are actually somewhat normal and they'll like your stuff. And they tend to be people who cross over to both platforms, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Substack Notes, by the way, which is also excellent. So if you're not on Substack, I highly recommend it. I don't know if any of you attended the webinar that I was a part of on Tuesday. If you did, please, I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it out. It's going to be uploaded to the CFNS US YouTube channel at some point. Canadian Citizens for National Security, which is a number of activists who are connected with people in Congress who are equally concerned about many of the issues that we talk about here and we talk about on social media and try to draw attention to. Also, yesterday, it's funny. I was, I'm trucking very limited right now because I don't have a lot of time. I guess almost to the point where it's starting to wind down. And I was crossing the border this week, and I've never seen this. When you cross Fort Erie, normally on the trucking bridge, there are, I think it's 10 lanes, if I'm not mistaken, of trucks that can cross and where the border guard agents are. And normally there's a lineup across the Fort Erie Bridge, and it's really, hundreds of trucks really that are crossing the border, a regular stream of trucks crossing the border. What was shocking on Thursday, I was there around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have never seen this ever. Of the 10 lanes, I think it's 10, it's 8 or 10, I think it's 10. Of the 10 lanes that are always utilized, 8 of them were closed. Only 2 lanes were open, and I was the only truck in the time zone. It was crazy. I'd never even seen this during COVID, because during COVID, goods were flowing across the border, and there was still a lineup of trucks across the Fort Erie Bridge, but I've never seen this. It was crazy. I was the only, and this was in the middle of the day when there should be a ton of traffic flowing from the US, from Canada into the US. Now, I'm told a lot of the warehouses had been stocking up for a couple of months ever since all this tariff stuff started. So I don't know if it's because the distribution channels are full and prepared for this tariff war, obstruction, negotiation, depending on your perspective, or if it's the new executive order that, crazy as it is, you must be able to read and speak English to drive a truck in the United States. And that is, you'll notice there's a high percentage of trucks that cross the border at Fort Erie and Queenston, Lewiston, where the truckers don't speak any English. It's kind of crazy. So more on that later. I'll discuss that soon. I'm going to probably cover that in an article in the National Telegraph and some of the other publications that pick up my stuff sometime soon. I hope there's a growing base of people that love freedom in Canada. The future needs them. Well, there's a bunch of us. I think that's the majority of Canadians are like that. It's just people, we're going to get into some of the tactics that are used to prevent people from engagement. And a big thing is, people are just busy. The radical left protests because they're all unemployed. It's simple as that. Like they don't work. Whereas the rest of us, this is why the trucker convoy was different, because we're all working. We're too busy for this stuff. That's why you defer your government to people you elect for them to do some work. And it gets, for the rest of it, it's really frustrating. But anyways, let's start with a couple things. So first, some interesting news. Tesla, and don't worry, I'm going to get into the other stuff that's in the title, I promise you. But Tesla, there's a new law that was passed in Texas, apparently, around self-driving cars. And basically, the state now has the right to override any municipal regulations around self-driving cars. So normally what could happen is a local city council, mayor, whatever, could vote to ban self-driving cars in their jurisdiction or bring in certain, regulations, whatever. And I know a lot of people are like, I've seen some people suggesting that, oh, this is authoritarian and, the cities should be able to dictate what they want. And I get that, but there is a problem. That's where the corruption is. That's where the extortion is. And if you're an industry, I can see why they lobbied for this. If you're an industry that's trying to technologically innovate, and you have, the backing of the state, but then all of a sudden every municipality decides, oh, they have their regulations. A new set of regulations they're going to introduce. You know why they're doing that? That's them putting their hands out for bribes. And so it's very interesting that Texas has decided that they're going to override anything that the municipalities feel that they would want to bring in. And by the way, I mentioned this before, I am total petrol head. I love cars. I love cars that use a lot of gas and have stick shifts and lots of time on the racetrack. But you need to try Tesla full self-driving. If you have a chance, go on one of their test drives. You can go to any Tesla store and they'll let you take one out for 20 minutes. It is the future. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. And it doesn't mean you're against classic cars or against gasoline cars. It just serves a little bit of a different purpose. And maybe I could see this leading to regulations when enough cars have full self-driving in the future, that in congested areas during rush hour, that you may see a full self-driving mandate through regulation. Actually, I can guarantee that because the insurance industry will lobby for it. But, I think that's way off in the future. Many of us will probably be long gone by then. But anyway, it's just interesting. Don't be afraid of new technology. Don't necessarily embrace it, but, consider it. And, you know, everything in life is trade-offs. Doesn't mean we got to fear everything that's new. And I promise you, you'll all see some value in it. You know, irrespective of where you are on the political spectrum. Um, NPC, I'm very black pilled now, so I hope Canada splits up. Well, we're going to talk about that. It's definitely based on what's happening now. There's absolutely zero chance of that, but I'll explain that in a second. The other thing that happened this week that was kind of funny is I don't know if you saw, but and good morning, Risa. Apparently, Neil Young is crazy. I mean, he's always a little bit crazy, but he's completely lost his mind. He's got some song that sounds like all his other songs, and it's something something Trump, Hitler, something blah 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 fascist. I don't know. It's just it's absolutely astounding. And what I love is I, I'm also a big music guy, as many of us are. I play a bunch of instruments, right? And I've always just, you know, you cringe when conservatives blast or play in a band or, you know, whatever. They revere this song, Rockin' in the Free World from Neil Young. And when conservatives do this, and I'm like, what are you, completely dumb and illiterate? Have you listened to the words? Like they hear this phrase, "rocking in the free world." Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, a little bit of context for those of you who don't know, and I know a lot of people don't know because they don't really pay attention to it. But it's, you know, the people who are singing the words probably should know. So for those who don't know, who are singing the words to "rocking in the free world" all the time, uh, "rocking in the free world" couldn't be more woke left unless it was full out communism. Like, that's the song. It's a protest song that protests Americanism and capitalism, and it blames the free market for homelessness, for poverty. I keep on rocking in the free world equals keep ignoring the homeless, gun violence, and climate change, or as they described it back then, the hole in the ozone layer. Um, and they put that all at the feet of Americanism. That's what Neil Young was writing about. Is blaming America for everything, blaming the free market for it. And, you know, there's the line in it. I don't feel like Satan, but I am to them, so I'll try to forget it any way I can. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the song. So I really caution, you know, conservatives who celebrate that song that perhaps your literacy might be in question. It's just really frustrating. But the point is, Neil Young's as crazy as he ever was, and great, good on to him. And it's amazing how people try to scramble for relevance. And, you know, you hear that and you think like, wow, was everything I knew about music as a kid a total lie? Was it all just leftist corporatism in the form of propaganda, in the form of music? Is that what we all grew up with? Is that why so many people aren't able to process difficult topics? I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, Eric Adams. Eric Adams has decided to just put the last spike in the heart of New York City and destroy it permanently. They've now passed a law that mosques do not require a permit to blast their obnoxious um, call to prayer hate speech. Has no problem. That is no longer requires a permit. And, you know, you've seen this happen in leftist jurisdictions where people are obsessed with a religion they know nothing about. And people who are Muslims will tell you, you know, Imam Tawhidi says it's not a religion of peace. And that's a kind of spitting in the face of people who practice that religion, to be entirely honest. But it's funny. It's just really weird how, and we'll get into this. This is relevant to later on, but how politicians just pivot and turn on a dime. A few years ago, I ended up meeting Eric Adams at a friend's house. They had a little party for him. It was a Christmas party, but they invited Eric Adams, and he had just announced his candidacy for mayor. He was Brooklyn president. I can't remember the title, but basically the mayor with limited powers for the city of Brooklyn, or at least that's how he described it to me. And sounds associated, but yeah. Anyways, sorry, I'm just getting lots of comments coming up. And by the way, post all your comments everywhere, and I'll try to get to them as I can. So, met with Eric Adams, and it was very funny. I came there with a friend of mine who is an ex-Muslim, and who is very, how should we say, had a life of abuse from extremism, because this person grew up around extremism. This person didn't grow up around moderates, you know. And we walked in, and everybody was introduced, and we were introduced to Eric. And he said to her, because she's pretty, he said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, I'm from Saudi Arabia." Not thinking that this might be somebody who's a little bit opposed to extremism. So to try to have a moment of bonding, what did he say to this person who's very outspoken about extremism? He said, "Oh, I'm going there tomorrow." And she looked at him. Her smile went to like a very cold, "Don't go. Don't go near there." It's so funny. Like deer in the headlights. Oh, why? What's wrong? And they had a little bit of a back and forth. But I found what was funny about Eric Adams is he's a Democrat, but really liked him. His family are all either in law enforcement or military. They're pro-gun. They're all centrist. They're all reasonable. They understand the threats of what's going on in the world. And I remember we asked, because I was with a couple of people, and we were, talking a little group together. And I was talking to his cousin or brother, I don't know, a very close relative, who's just obviously a supporter, helping with the campaign, who's ex-military. And I said, or retired military. And I said, why are you running on the Democratic ticket? Like that doesn't, you sound more like a Republican. And the response was interesting. You know what he said? His response was, "New York's a tough town for a Republican." So unlike the Canadian system, where it's top down, where the leaders of the parties and this is why you have the problem with these little cartels that run political parties, they can just disqualify whoever they want. In the United States, and sometimes they're frustrated by it, but the reality is it might be a good thing. In the United States, if you win the primary, the party can't do anything about it. They can't eject you like they do in the parliamentary system. And so it's very clear they were inferring that, yeah, we do have a lot of, Republican small government, strict on crime regulation, philosophies. But a Republican's not going to win here, so we got to run on the Democratic ticket. And now he's paving the way for jihad. It's frustrating when I see people, the political echo chambers, that they prop up political leaders like they're heroes. That is very dangerous. They're not Marvel characters. They're not going to save you. They're opportunists. They're working like everybody else, but the product they're selling is just words and promises. And I think it's really dangerous. We see this over and over again when people, everybody coalesces around somebody, and then boom, when you need them most, they completely turn on you. Weldon says, I'm brand new to Substack. Interesting so far. Yeah, so far it's pretty good, and it's quite, free speech adjacent and a promoter of free speech. So I highly recommend it. It's really good for long form posts. So I do post a lot of my, journalistic articles go in my Substack. So it's good in terms of it's able to balance both. Just a little note on Bitcoin, because we're going to start hearing a lot about Bitcoin again, as we seem to be entering a bull market if it sustains itself through this, the trade negotiations. That Norway is the latest country to buy, was it 500 billion or 500 million in Bitcoin for their treasury. And you're seeing a number of jurisdictions in the United States, state law, state legislators that are putting legislation on the books to custodial Bitcoin. I've been begging people in my private life, friends, family, stuff like that, to buy Bitcoin since it was $1,500, $2,000, around there. And one friend listened. Nobody else did. It is now, in Canadian terms, what's it, 120,000 or something like that? So it, as a sailor explains, because of the fixed supply, it goes up to infinity. You've been warned. Don't miss the greatest asymmetric hedge of your life. All right. Next. People can get so upset at this, but I'm sorry. The truth really upsets people, right? My feed just froze. Sorry. There's something wrong, because I can see, usually the people who pile into Substack, it follows a certain trend, and now it's frozen. I've never seen that before. So there's definitely something wrong there. So I don't know if some of you have heard the chatter around Tucker Carlson, or as he's commonly referred to now by many people as Tucker Carlson. It's so funny. He continues to implode. He's doing a great job at completely obliterating his own audience. And I know so many people who just don't even care about that issue, don't understand the issue of political entryism in the Middle East, but they see so much other deception coming out of him that I've had so many people say to me, I don't know what happened to him. He left Fox and now he's crazy. I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why he was suggested to seek employment elsewhere. Maybe this is how he always was. I don't know. But by the way, I apologize. I'm still a little bit sick. So this week, there was an interesting video by Nathan Livingston, which is Mike Barr TV. And it was a side-by-side comparison. And, sometimes you see these side-by-sides and they're taken out of context. But in this case, it wasn't, because it was a similar topic of conversation. It was a side-by-side of Tucker Carlson. And one was from the interview with the British guy who nobody in England likes, whatever his name is. What's his name? Who's that British guy? That British guy. He's on YouTube now. He was like a daily host. What's his name? Morgan. That's right. Piers Morgan. That's right. So he, in the Piers Morgan interview, when he was asked, is Israel an ally? He did what does that mean? I don't know what that means. He said exactly like that. You can watch the side by side. He doesn't know what an ally is. Yeah, okay. When he asked about Israel, doesn't know what an ally is, can't contextualize and steelman the relationship politically, whatever, has no idea. But then this week, I think it was this week's episode, he explains wholeheartedly why Qatar is an ally. We have a base in Qatar. They're an ally of the United States. Mr. I don't understand what an ally is now adamant. He doesn't know what an ally is, but he's adamant that Qatar is an ally of the United States. It's very similar to the what is a woman phenomenon out out of Tucker Carlson. Women's rights, but I don't know what a woman is, but I believe in women's rights. That's what Tucker Carlson is doing. And it's interesting for people who don't know. I know there's a lot of people who've been following this for quite some time, especially as I had been producing other podcasts on this topic for several years. Qatar is the Muslim Brotherhood. That's just the only way to describe it, and there is friction on the inside, and the Emir of Qatar is on shaky ground right now, apparently, facing potential revolt. But Qatar is, ARC, exactly. Qatar is a huge problem. It is a huge problem because it is the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization, which, by the way, is operating in every country in the world. Every single country in the world has Muslim Brotherhood activism on the ground. And when they're there, they try to get involved in politics and utilize political entryism. That's their mantra. ARC says they financed Hamas. Well, yes, because it's a Muslim Brotherhood militia. That's what Hamas was. Is, going to be was. That's one of the many Muslim Brotherhood militias. It's funny that when you look at history, not that everybody got together and was singing Kumbaya around the world, but the reality is, as bad as the Ottoman Empire was to live under their rule, or you go back to the 7th and 8th century, how bad things were, one could say the Prophet Muhammad, I got to say this, peace be upon him. Are you going to leave me alone? He wouldn't have been seen, it wasn't as, in the context of the modern world, you got to understand the difference of battling empires versus the modern state nationalist world that we live in. They are way more extreme now. The extremists in the West and the ISIS type people, they are they are full Salafists. The Salafist movement didn't come along until the 1700s? I think that's when it went just full on crazy. And it never really had any political traction, at least from what I understand. But that is until Hassan al-Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood was created in the 1920s. And then you had the violent wing of it, 𝐷𝐻𝐿. That's why it's a terrorist group, a terrorist organization. And their goal, as stated from its founding, is to subvert the West and tear it apart from the inside, even up to Yusuf Qaradawi and all their leaders and al-Maududi. And this is the school of thought. This is what World War III is. It's a culture war. It's a subversion war of extremists from that part of the world, And this is why when you see one of those ridiculous looking camel jockeys in one of the extremist mosques, we're going to take over and blah, blah, blah. They mean it because that is their founding principles. And it's just infuriating when people in the West get so brainwashed because they have some fetish about Judaism because they know nothing about the religion. And I'm very secular myself, as I think many of us are. But, their fetish for a religion they don't understand blinds them to the fact that, hey, those guys are fighting the people who are trying to destroy your country and your society from within. And by the way, they're the only ones doing it. So they're your solution. But people so easily get brainwashed by people like Tucker Carlson for them to smear the solution to the cultural problem they're facing within their country. It's really frustrating. And, why would that sort of narrative be coming out of somebody like Tucker Carlson? Well, like often in politics, follow the money. And it's no coincidence that TCN, his YouTube channel and his website, was funded by an extreme leftist Democrat until 2022? Malik? He was funding Democrats the entire time. He's like a Soros type person, and allegedly has very strong ties to Qatar. Well, okay, well now that explains it, and this is why, yeah, I've been saying frequently in spaces when we're discussing this sort of stuff that it's not your opposition that brainwashes you. It's the people that you trust on your side who are lying to you. That's who brainwashes you. And if the opposition is financially backing the people you trust, that's how you get brainwashed. That's how you get Tucker Carlson, right? And let me, by the way, let me remind you that Tucker Carlson. Well, Tucker. Anyways, the name doesn't ring off the. It doesn't flow as well. We got to figure something else out. But anyways, reminder that Tucker also did a couple events in Canada with the scam artists that sabotaged the truckers. Remember that? He came to a bunch of us like, what the hell is he doing here now? The Qatari mouthpiece meets with, because some of the people who are funding that are really crazy. They're really nuts, you know. Lots of money and not many functioning brain cells, and they buy into every conspiracy. So they invited him to on stage with the people who screwed all the truckers. None of these people are on your side. None of them. They're not on your side, and we're going to get into the Alberta separatism as that relates to it. And look, the reality is, you know, there's so much more I can talk about in politics, but I don't, because people will just argue with me because they won't believe it, and then they'll just argue. So what's the point, right? When it's relevant, I'll talk about stuff to get it on people's radar. NPCs, our own governments, is our greatest enemy. No, it's our political class and the people who fund our political class. That's the greatest enemy. The government is just an apparatus that they latch onto that they corrupt, but it's a layer above that. But the reality is, and I've said to some of you know, I've spent a lot of my life in Latin America, in Mexico, Colombia, Panama. Canada is as corrupt. It's as politically corrupt as Mexico was when I first moved there. Like, it's horrible, you know? And it's really sad to see that that's what's become of Canada. And it's because of people on our side, as well as people who have alien values to us who have done that. It's frustrating. Now, do I think things are going to work out? Yeah, I do. But I always talk about there's going to be bumps in the road as we get on to this more, golden age of prosperity. But these are some of the bumps in the road. Okay, so this is all relevant to this stuff. It all kind of connects to it. Scary stuff. The idea. This is from Risa. Scary stuff. The idea that it's the people you trust are the ones that brainwash you. That's why people don't want to accept it, because that's the greater danger. Because that means you can't just turn on your favorite, YouTube vlogger and believe them. Because sometimes, like one of them that frustrates me is Tim Pool. And not because I think Tim Pool's a bad guy, but I know he's connected. He's adjacent to the political cartels. He's not necessarily controlled, but he's definitely adjacent to them. But he gets so much wrong. He's so much wrong, like just factually wrong. It's just really frustrating. And anyways, good morning, Jesse. I hope Rocky is there with you. By the way, Rocky is a bird and is apparently my most loyal fan. So thank you for joining, and it's good to see you. So Trump had said, was a couple of days ago, this is great, when he was asked about the Canadian election, Trump said, quote, "The one that hated Trump the least, that's who won." I think that's how he worded it. The conservative hated me more than the so-called liberal. Why did he say that? So Trump says the one that hated Trump the least is the one who won. Those are the words he used. The conservative hated me more than the so-called liberal. That is true. That is very true. Part of the reason I got a lot of pushback and attacks amongst Canadian conservatives around the time of the trucker convoy was because I was pro-Trump from 2015, 2016. And just because I could see there's a whole bunch of boxes that he checked off. I'm not endorsing the rhetoric, but I understood the tactics that he was using from a messaging perspective. A number of us did. Scott Adams is probably the one who did the best analysis of it, but it was an important infusion into our politics to fix much of what I just talked about a couple of minutes ago with our political class. And I can tell you, wow, the hatred and wrath towards Trump within that conservative party is unreal. They are, and I'm not saying that there are some concerns that aren't valid. You know, I guess the most reasonable one was maybe the lack of experience within the political structure, so you can navigate the deception, because it's very different than the business world. So I get that. But they are rabid anti-Trumpers in the Canadian Conservative Party from the top down. They absolutely hate him, just like the Democratic Party. And again, notwithstanding some reasonable concerns, but it becomes an echo chamber that feeds on itself, and they radicalize each other like all echo chambers do. And this is why political parties are cults. This is why lobbyists, from the left wing and the right wing, is a revolving door in and out of the political parties, whether it's running for office or becoming a chief of staff or an EA or something like that. It's all the same group. That's why the messaging is horrible, because it's the same revolving door of losers who don't know how to message and who just, like the conservatives, 3 in a row, the hat trick of losses, the hat tricks of losers, of political losers. But that's why. Somebody says, you're incredibly hopeful. Where does that hope come from? I'm going to get to that in the end. I'm going to explain that. But yes, I am very hopeful and very positive. But anyways, so they were, that's why I was astounded by the amount of friction that I got after our election within the Conservative Party, because I dared to say that I think Trump's pretty good. Just like daggers out of their eyes. Like the obsessed hatred in that party amongst the people who run the party is really crazy. And Trump obviously knows that. Right. And also that's why I backed away from party politics a few years after that, just because I realized it's a cult of sociopaths. But that's also why I helped New Blue and presented their Bitcoin policy and their anti-jihad policy at their convention last year, because that's a party that was started by people who were stabbed in the back by those psychopaths multiple times. And they said, okay, we're going to go create our own Ontario party. We're going to create a real conservative Ontario party. Okay. So anyways, so people in Ontario have an option, but I'm sure most people will just go on ignoring that and continue to complain and continue voting for the people who stab them in the back and continue to complain about it. And speaking of reasons to complain about them, I posted this week about Bill C63. Do you remember that bill? I posted a video from Scott Adams who talked about it. I sent him some stuff around that time. And I posted, a little bit of hyperbole, just to, usually using hyperbole as a tool sort of thing sometimes, which is good communications in certain and very select instances. But I believe the bill died in prorogation when the parliament was prorogued. So I believe that it was with all the other stuff, he was taken off the docket and would have to start from scratch. But it did make it through the second reading. So Bill C63, just a refresher, that's the pre-crime bill, the thought crime bill. So if somebody felt as though you might in the future offend them and commit hate speech, then you could be arrested and potentially imprisoned for life. So life in Canada, if I remember from OAC law, was 25 years. But that's the implication. So if somebody felt as though you might say something offensive in the future, you could be charged and face up to 25 years or life imprisonment in Canada. That's crazy dystopian stuff. That's when it's time to leave. Really, that's when it's okay. Time to get out. And it could be for something you had said at any point in your life, used as evidence because he said this 20 years ago. I think he might say something offensive to me. Therefore, and by the way, offensive to me means offensive to the religion of peace. That's where this all comes from. By the way. So it's a veiled blasphemy law, is what it is. So okay, that's off the table. They prorogued Parliament. The bill is gone. Do you think that's going to come back? Do you think it's never going to come back? You don't think they'll give it a try again? And most concerningly, we just had an election. Did you notice the Conservatives said nothing about Bill C63, the thought crime bill? And it's the excuse of, oh, well, it's prorogued, it doesn't matter anymore. Excuse me, from a messaging standpoint, from the experts in politics who've lost 3 elections in a row, how difficult or what an opportunity it would be, right? To, instead of, ignoring it, saying, you're going to vote for an advisor to Trudeau who tried to push a thought crime bill. We want freedom for everybody. We don't want to put people into prison for thinking the wrong thing, even when we disagree, because we need to be able to talk to each other, right? That's what Mark Carney is. He's the thought crime bill person who wants to put you in jail if you say the wrong thing. But they didn't say anything about it. Why didn't the CPC say anything about, like, it was a gift in messaging that they could have used, right? And this is where they say, oh, BJ knows nothing about politics, and I say you're a hat trick of losers. Why wouldn't they talk about it? Why would they ignore that? Why would they ignore sounding the alarm that or say it this way, we want liberals to be able to speak as well, but a thought crime bill can apply to anybody. And there is no place for that in a liberal Western democracy. Why did the Conservatives not say a damn word about the most dangerous piece of legislation in the country's history? Not a fucking word. Nothing. Why? Hashtag leadership. Because they're afraid? They're afraid to say it? That's our leadership? Like, they're really pathetic. I can't tell you how pathetic they are. They lost and they deserve to lose. And they deserve to lose again if they continue this. Right? Yes, I am. Yes, I am incredibly hopeful for the future. I'm going to get to that. But really, I'm not hopeful because of them. Because right now, they're pathetic. They're absolutely pathetic. And yes, Mark Carney's pathetic as well, for different reasons. And this brings me to my earlier point of, it's not the people on your side. Sorry, it's not the people who are your opposition who brainwash you. It's the people on your side. And here's a good example. And this is also why the reason I've tried to warn people and to walk them through how the Freedom Convoy was sabotaged and how they stabbed us all in the back and then tried to blame all of us for it. Because this is how political trash works. Remember the earlier parts of the stream, see if you can remember them, Risa or Jesse, if you're here, who are the three people who are the least credible people in society, right? Lawyers, the media, and politicians. That's what all these people are, all of them. And so here's a perfect example, and why I've been trying to get people to understand why and how all those mouthpieces that defamed the rest of us were propped up on alternative media. You know, like what's that pig? The Humpty Dumpty. What's that guy's name? Anyways, the Humpty Dumpty fat guy, the pig guy. Anyways, looks like Porky Pig. People like that were had their platforms elevated so they could monetize their platforms to defame the rest of us who tried to warn you about this phenomenon. And here is why. Okay, you saw this week the dirtbag lawyer who also sabotaged us and ran off with the money, because he's the one who received, the Bitcoin address. He's the one who put it into escrow and set up all the lawyers, and they're all going to, litigate all the donations for themselves, right? So the dirtbag lawyer was on True North this week, which is also controlled by Conservative Party donors, because, by the way, it's a charity. I don't know how that works. You have a news agency that's a charity. Okay, news agency. And what are they doing? They're trying to identify him as this leader from this Alberta separatist movement. Well, that doesn't sound right. Surely there were people on the ground for years that were leading this Alberta separatist political framing. I know because everybody in Alberta knows who some of these people are, because I know some people who've met them. I was told about this when I was in Alberta like 6 years ago, that there's a separatist party, whatever. Like, okay, fine. But we've seen this before, where True North is trying to prop up this, Canada's Better Call Saul as the leader of this separatist thing. By the way, Ezra Levant's closest friend, another scumbag. Look, people are fed up in Alberta, rightfully so. And there are a lot of people that are very, very eager for to separate. But I don't see any solutions. Separate what? Become an independent country that's landlocked? Or join the United States? I don't know what it is. But this is another example of the conservative subversion cartel moving in to destroy a movement, exactly like they did with the trucker convoy. So it's a template. There is a movement. So what is the conservative subversion cartel, Big Con Canada, whatever you want to call it? What do? They identify that there's a growing political movement, and they use their riding associations and EDAs to kind of figure out where it's coming from and who it is. So they choose one of themselves to appoint themselves as the perceived leader, which is what you're seeing in that True North interview that none of you should watch. They get involved so they can co-opt it, and they can LARP or act as fake activism to get ahead of this movement getting out of their control. I've said many times when I got involved in party politics, the thing I heard out of conservatives all the time was, we need to control the messaging. We need to control the messaging. So what they'll do is they'll work with each other. Whoever's in their media propaganda part will promote one of them to be perceived as the leader, even though they're not. They have nothing to do with it, really. And then what they're going to do is they're going to create a website or something. In this case, I guess it was a petition. They'll start collecting emails and then start rage farming donations. so they can suck you all for as much money as possible. You're losing your freedoms, and we need, in this case, we need to separate and blah 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 to get everyone radicalized as much as possible. This is why it's called rage farming. So you start dipping into your wallet, give them your credit card, and start giving them your money. So they will then they'll draw up some BS constitutional challenge that they know will fail, because constitutional challenges almost never have any success in Canada, because here it's almost impossible. It's done through Parliament. But they suck the rest of you, thinking that you don't know that. So we're going to range farm a constitutional challenge that they know will fail. They will run off with the money. And then when they lose the constitutional challenge, rinse and repeat and come back to you for more money. And this is the tactic that they use to subvert anyone who actually has legitimate political concerns, who wants to organize and start any sort of new group. They did it with 𝐓𝐇𝐄. Remember 𝐓𝐇𝐄? Why does a Conservative Party insider hold the domain for 𝐓𝐇𝐄 and all the documentations and the paperwork? Why does she have it? An unnamed, like a nameless figure in the Conservative Party has everything, all the legal intellectual property around 𝐓𝐇𝐄. How did the Conservative Party get that? So they did this with 𝐓𝐇𝐄. They did this with the 2019 convoy. They did this with no more lockdowns. They did this with the Freedom Convoy. They're doing this with Alberta separatism. How many times do you have to see the same thing to realize this is a structured pattern of behavior? This is a tactic that is used to keep all of you enslaved. That's it. It is there to milk you for as much money as possible in a containment strategy, to contain all of you so your grievances are never actually realized. They are there to ruin your movements. And they're doing it again in Alberta. All of these people that you see on these, propaganda outlets that claim to be conservative and freedom and Western values, they're all bullshit. They're there just to milk you for money because they want nothing to do with separatism, but they will act that way because I'm sure there's people on the ground who are really actually interested in actual separatism. Maybe call Peter Downing or some of the other people that started 𝐓𝐶IT or have been doing this for years and ask them what their opinions are of these establishment conservative people who are co-opting their movement again. That's why people need to study the Freedom Convoy and listen to me. Listen to my testimony at the POEC. That's what Jim and I were mapping out. You know how Jim knows? Because he was part of the Conservative Party for 15 years. We know the people who do it. The nameless, shadowy figures who may not remain nameless for very long. That's where why do you think that's where the money goes in politics? It's to create all these containment parties, containment strategies, containment grassroots organizations to destroy anything. And what happens? The liberals capitalize on it, and the country goes increasingly more and more to the left. Right? Many of the people who are involved in this Alberta separatism, their motivations are, I think, genuine and unique. They're just really frustrated. They're really frustrated. They see that there's the leverage that's used in Quebec, but they have the oil industry that is backing up much of the country's economy, yet they feel like they get nothing for it. I get it. But these people who are acting as they co-opt yet another conservative movement in Canada, they don't share your motivations. There's certain people evaluate things this way, and I happen to agree with them. The four motives of the four ideas of ideas. I'm trying to figure the right wording for it. It's escaping me right now. The four types of motivation. right? Reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. It's called RICE. So reward, financial reward. Ideology, it's your belief system. Coercion, you're being forced, blackmail and stuff. And ego, you're just an egomaniac and you're doing it to prop yourself up. So the people who are concerned about this stuff, it's ideology. They're concerned about the country continuing to slip into this dystopian nightmare. But the problem is the political trash that come in and co-opt all your movements. They don't share the motivation that you do. For them, it's reward and ego. That's it. It's a completely the opposite of what's driving the people who are getting politically involved because they're frustrated and they're worried for their future. So when you see these people who start to get involved in your movements, try to put that framing on that and try to figure out which bucket do they belong in. Is it reward, ideology, coercion, or ego? What is getting them involved in your grassroots movement? And what they're going to do is they're going to continue to try to radicalize you as much as possible so they can suck money into you, money out of you for their latest .com, save Canada because whatever. And nothing is ever going to materialize from it because it never does. It's just the way it is. Northern Perspective is CPC Shield 2. Yeah, there's containment parties all over the country. Like they're all contained by the political establishment, right? It seems everyone, this from Risa, it seems everyone has been bought or threatened by the Muslim Brotherhood. There's a lot of lawfare, threats of lawfare that happens, right? Jesse, yes, that's right. The three least credible people in society: lawyers, the media, and politicians. I always like to say lawyers with an asterisk because they are, paid advocates. So if that's their job, would be to advocate for you. Carney is going to be the end ruin of this country. Those who vote liberal are a problem. I disagree. Not that Carney's not a real problem, because he is. The fact that he even got elected is crazy to me. But he has a minority government, and there's little chance of coalition. The NDP will, I'm sure, support a couple of, bills. They're going to have to stay in power for a year and a half as the NDP rebuilds itself, because the Conservatives and the NDP work together. They actually map out ridings and they give ridings to each other to weaken the Liberals. That's how they strategize together. So in order to get a Conservative party, you need a strong NDP. Everybody in the Liberals know that. Everybody in the Conservatives know that. And the NDP hope that one day it's going to be they'll really have their chance, right? So everybody needs to buy time. So how are they going to buy time? They'll deal with the trade war with Trump, and everybody will claim victory when hopefully we get this idea of a free economic zone with no border and no tariffs and no taxes and free trade. That would open up the U.S. market, and the Canadian market gets opened to American businesses. So we have two separate governments, like in Europe, like going from France to Germany. Two distinct countries, but one shared economy would be massive. That would be great. So I think that's probably going to be the focus, and that will be where the NDP, I don't know the NDP, but maybe the Bloc Québécois, because people in Quebec, I like Quebec's business culture, actually. It's a lot more like American business culture, to be entirely honest. But I could see them focusing on that. They'll pass, a couple of Bloc Quebec people and will support a couple of things that are, not all that consequential to the country. At least I hope so. And we'll be back at the polls in a year to 18 months. Because every party wants to have more power. And the Conservatives want a majority. The Liberals want a majority. So we'll be back at the polls. I wouldn't worry about it. So I don't think too much is going to happen. I could be wrong, but I don't see too much getting done. over the next year to 18 months. So somebody mentioned here that, why are you so positive for the future? I want to declare a declaration of war against Trump. Oh yeah, this is about Carney's war with Trump, and I don't know how much of that is political theater, because remember, Trump and Carney know each other. They've known each other for decades. It's just part of being part of the international business community in development. And I mean, judging by what I saw at the border yesterday, of all 10 lanes, only 2 were open and no trucks were going through. That is not good for Canada's economy. So I think Trump and Poilievre, and who's ever going to lead the NDP and the Bloc Quebec, they all know you can't engage in a trade war with the largest economy in human civilization that is 12 times your size. You just can't. At some point, you got to be practical. So I'm actually not too worried about Carney in that respect. Again, I could be completely wrong, but I think he's going to wait. Carney's going to wait for a majority until the real dangerous stuff is tabled, because that way he can push it through. So he's got to play somewhat of a moderate for now, which is always the case with minority governments. So why the positivity? Well, it's simple. Let's step back to framing throughout history, right? We just talked about some things that are really aggravating and really obnoxious. And it causes, a little bit of stress from all of us. Okay, fine. But every society thinks that their society is going to collapse in every generation. My parents grew up the early parts of the Cold War. Everybody thought, you never know, there's going to be a nuke tomorrow. And it was global cooling. And then it was the acid rain. And then the ozone layer. There's always a catastrophe that we're being sold to make us a little bit radicalized and crazy that is somewhat artificial. So and we're no different. We're seeing this right now. So there's chaos in every generation. Every generation, the world is going to collapse. But somehow we're still here. Somehow we make it through. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of catastrophes that happen along the way, and some bumps in the road, some real bad ones sometimes. But we still make it through. We're still here. Society has still progressed to the point where we have NASA going to the moon, Musk going to Mars. I mean, next stream, I'm going to share some more, advances in technology. Like, I spend a lot of my time reading tech and advances in science news. When you read that stuff, it's amazing how things have come along. That's why I started with the Tesla FSD. Even as a car person, it's amazing. It is going to change the world more than anybody realizes. Maybe we'll talk about that next time, how it's going to change the world. So despite the fact that in the face of adversity, that the world is always collapsing and we're all going to die, somehow we're still here. What has changed is, I think, the degree at which and the speed at which people are emotionally radicalized by people on their own side has increased tremendously because of the advances of telecommunications and the internet. But I think we just need time to get used to that. That's going to take a generation or so. And you can already see it. I mean, I saw it in 2016 when, was it 2015 or 2016? All of a sudden, university students would come into my business, and you know what they stopped doing? They stopped using Facebook. It was the weirdest thing. Facebook was like the biggest thing on campus. Every university student had a Facebook profile. They're using it for sharing files, group studies, whatever. And then 15 or 16, whatever it was, all of a sudden, like, somebody turned off a switch, and now Facebook was just for old people in their minds. That's what they said, right? So I think there's a learning curve to all of this. And this is why I talk about understanding how these containment parties are created, how movements are subverted, how they're using social media to do it and to manipulate you. And it comes from your own side, because once you see it enough times, once you see the pattern, and it's not so scary, then you can say, okay, yeah, they're just doing the same crap they always do, right? With the Alberta separatism, they're doing the same thing they do every time. They're going to try to milk as many of you for money, hope that you're naive, and we'll give it to them. They'll do some fake constitutional challenge. They'll line their pockets. It will fail. They'll try to do it again. And then what's going to happen? We'll be into an election in a year to 18 months, and then they'll drop all of it. And all of a sudden it'll be, oh, we have to elect Pierre Poilievre. You'll see. They'll switch like that. They'll switch just as quickly as the green energy people who loved Tesla a week later started burning Tesla dealerships. So it's not just the left that do this. This is everybody. This is human nature. We can all be manipulated, right? So this is also why I encourage people to hear the best arguments from the side you disagree with, because you all know the good arguments on your side. Doesn't mean you agree with the best argument on the other side, but you just got to understand it. That way you can understand, your crazy relatives who just don't get it, because you can understand what they've been subjected to and how they're coming to their conclusions. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to work out. It's going to be bumpy road for sure. So it's going to be, in the case of Canada, it's going to be a year of everybody being radicalized by the political apparatus. The left are being radicalized for different things. The world is on fire and climate change is going to kill us, and gender identity is the one true God. And on the right side, you're going to be radicalized because we don't have any freedoms anymore. We need a constitutional challenge, and the country's going to collapse. We want nothing to do with Canada anymore. Oh, there's an election? Okay, support Pierre Poilievre. Like that. It's just how it all works, man. It's just it, And if you don't let it get the better of you, then you're not going to suffer the anxiety that some people are suffering. And I think needlessly so. This is also why I encourage people to be good to people that you don't know, to strangers, people you encounter day to day. It's really good for your karma. It's really good for your subconscious. And it's really good to set your frame. I've been doing this all this week. I've been trying to reset my frame with that 5-minute journal, which I've talked about in previous things, just because things are a little bit stressful right now. And if you do that too, it's going to be easier to navigate all this stuff and see the positive frame of the stuff that we're dealing with. My friend was off a few times, so I didn't hear your thoughts on positive taking by election seat in Alberta. Well, I'm going to re-upload this so you can watch it after. I can't re-adjudicate all of it in such a short period of time. But I think in terms of Alberta, there's a lot of people around the country in Quebec and in Ontario who understand how important Alberta is. Like, we know it. This is why during the Freedom Con it was so frustrating that, you see all this. You can see them starting this rhetoric again. They're trying to poison and radicalize people in the West against Quebec. Seeing these videos about transfer payments. The federal government's doing transfer payments to Quebec, so you as an Albertan should hate French people. Or how about my framing of it is, oh, that means conservatives in Alberta are incompetent and can't do their job, so they're trying to radicalize you because they don't know how to find leverage in negotiations. Don't let them do that to you. Those are your fellow Canadians. They have a different culture. Yeah, there's friction, but they have a lot of cultural similarities, especially in rural Quebec. Don't fight with each other for these jackasses in politics who are manipulating you. Don't let them do that to you, right? Don't let them do it to the country. It's their job. They are the ones that are supposed to be negotiating transfer payments. Like, we don't even know how this, nobody knows how that works. Where does the money go? Who transfers it? How does it do? What are the legal documents? Like, they're radicalizing you against your fellow Canadians. Don't let them do it. Tell them, I don't want to hear about, your nuanced structure within government. I want you to do your, transfer payments are a problem? Good, do your job. I hired you, you fix it. Don't radicalize me, you fix it. That should be our attitude, right? Anyways, well, thank you, Cindy. that's very sweet of you. Okay, I've gone a little bit longer than I wanted to. I'm going to try doing these a couple of times a week. Like, I'll try to stick to Saturdays. I don't know if I can. I got to figure out a schedule where I can start doing them in the middle of the week as we're trying to work out studio and a whole bunch of stuff moving forward. But there will be a lot of stuff moving forward. MSM really hate Pierre Poilievre and Alberta right now. They don't. That's just the framing that they build. It's artificial. It's trying to get people in normie land to hate people in Alberta. We'll talk more about it another time. But listen, you're all wonderful. Let's stick through this together. Let's not get each other's throats. And maybe something we can do is help people not get radicalized by our political class. Tell them, drop the rebel news, drop the True North, drop the legacy media. Just talk to your friends and family. Just talk to them. Forget all the noise. Talk to them and try to reach them. And just say, don't allow everybody to radicalize us against each other. If we do that over time, we're going to be good. Things are going to be awesome. Thanks for your thoughts. Well, I appreciate it. I don't know if it's fascinating. It's just, but I appreciate it, Don. I'm just trying to do my best, trying to bring people together. During the trucker convoy, that was the idea behind what I was trying to do with the messaging, is just to get us all to tone things down and not be at each other's throats, because we all, as Canadians, we just got to get through our life day to day, right? The political public servants, which is what they are supposed to be taking care of this for us. So we don't have to waste our time with, nuanced political issues, so we can go out and work on our businesses or work on your family or whatever it is. They wanted the job to fix things. They wanted the benefits and the perks. Okay, well, you need to go fix things. And I would just like to continue to help to build that ethos where we try to understand each other. It doesn't mean we don't have friction on certain issues, but we can talk it out. And then sometimes there's going to be people you really like that you disagree with, that you're going to say, you know what? We just can't talk about this issue because we're never going to agree. You have one way of looking at this issue. I have another way of looking at this issue. I disagree. Great. We understand it. Let's not focus on our disagreements. Let's focus on our commonalities. So, all right. With that, I got to run. Love you all. Thank you for all the wonderful comments. And I'll continue doing more of this. There's a lot of big things coming down the pipeline in 2025. If anybody's going to be in Florida by any chance, June the 14th, I'm going to be speaking at a conference there about Bitcoin, which I try not to talk too much about here, but a little bit. I think it's important everybody understands it, and you all will at some point. But if you ever do have any questions about that, please let me know in the chat, and I can address some of the curiosities that some of you may have without going over the top for people who just get really intimidated by it. And not that I'm thinking about you, Jesse, because you're actually a lot better than most people, even though you think you're not good at technology. You'll catch me on Discord this week. Great. I will see you on Discord as well. And Don says, BTC for the win. Perfect. I'll end it on a high